Hello lovely people, my name is Emma and today I'm bringing you another rainbow recommendations, this time for books that have white covers that are simply excellent and need to be talked about more. Now I just want to warn you, there is a fair amount of non-fiction in this video. Apparently white covers are a big popular one for non-fiction. So we're going to start with the non-fiction first. The first one is Forensics, The Anatomy of Crime by Val McDermid. Val McDermid is actually a crime writer in the fiction department. She is, I think it's a she, is very, very prolific in the crime writing genre, and this is a look at some of the actual science and forensics behind some of the things that she's written about. It is a nice sweeping look at forensics in general, and it's a really good starting place if you're interested in forensic science but don't really know exactly what area of it you'd want to read about more. And what's really nice is it's very much a layman writing about forensic science, so everything's broken down in a very, very easy to understand way. I read this quite a few years ago now, but I did immensely enjoy it at the time and I have some very fond memories of it, so I'd really recommend it. Then I have Simon Blackburn's Think. This is a lovely little intro to philosophy that talks about some of the different areas of philosophy and what its kind of purpose is in a broader scope, and what each of the different sub departments and sub areas are trying to accomplish, for lack of a better word. This book is one that features quite heavily on most like intro to philosophy reading lists out there, and a lot of universities will recommend it as a place to start if you are interested in studying philosophy further. So it might be a good place to check out if you want to get into philosophy but don't really know what area you're interested in. This and The Pig That Wanted to Be Eaten are two of the books that I definitely credit with why I went on to do it as a full degree, and Simon Blackburn is a very, very prolific philosopher and philosophy writer out there, and he has a lot of really good like pop philosophy, for lack of a better word, books to get you into it. So yeah, I really recommend this. I read this book back in non-fiction November last year, and it's Renni Eddo-Lodge's Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race. There is to white people in here. This is a look at racism and is, funnily enough, and is actually based, or is the kind of brainchild of an essay that Renni wrote for an online magazine about why she's no longer talking to white people, specifically about race, as a black woman, and then from there it's kind of that got a lot of backlash and a lot of discussion online, and then this book is kind of the culmination of her experiences since then. It's specifically focused on race in Britain, which was really interesting for me as a reading experience, because a lot of the books out there do look at race within America, and specifically kind of the American issues around race, and there does definitely tend to be a tendency in the UK to be like, oh, we don't really have a race issue, we have a class issue, and actually the amount that overlays on top of each other, and it's something that Renni talks about in here. Each chapter is almost like a mini essay in its own right, and it was really interesting. I also listened to it on audiobook, and she narrates it, and I think it was fantastic for that. Okay, my last non-fiction book for this particular video is The Frog That Croaked Blue, Synesthesia and the Mixing of the Senses by Jamie Ward. I mentioned this a little while ago in a video for some of my favourite science and biology based non-fiction. This is a wonderful, very short look at the science behind synesthesia, which is where your brain mixes up the senses. So it's where people can hear music and see colour, or say words and have certain tastes in their mouth, or various kind of combinations of when one sense is presented, another one where there isn't that stimulus there to prompt it is still prompted, and they are consistent with it. So when they say, like, you know, 3 is a green colour, they match that consistently throughout. It doesn't change. It's something which I think a lot of people have to a much lesser degree, but this is looking at people who have it very intensely in their life, and looking at the different ways it can be expressed, and also some of the science behind it. Like I said, I read this absolute years ago, but it survived so many cullings on my shelf from moves and things, and it's one that I'd quite like to reread again soon, because I'm sure that I get more from it second time round. But yeah, if you are interested in the brain in general, I think this would be a really good place, like book to read, and it is quite short, which is really nice for science books. Okay, now we're going to talk about fiction. So the first one I have to talk about is Kate Thompson's The Blue Hour. This is a romance book, a chick lit for lack of a better word, and it details the story of Maddie Goddard. The beginning part of it does feature an abusive relationship, so definitely trigger warnings there. There are some scenes that were quite difficult to read, but it's about her essentially leaving her abusive partner and running away to France to hide out in a tiny French village who it's like a friend of a friend she's staying with, and then it's about her getting back on her feet and trying to kind of reclaim her identity again. It also features an incredibly scrummy artist in it, and it does talk about art and beauty and aesthetics in general, and I just found it a really, really lovely story that is a romance at its heart, but is also a book about kind of self-discovery and self-love. Really wonderful. Kate Thompson's generally quite a good romance writer out there. I've read I think 3 or 4 of her books and I've enjoyed all of them, but this I think is her strongest. Then we have a YA that I read as a teenager and I've never heard anybody talk about, and that's Zoo by Graham Marks. This is awesome. It's like a book about a kid who is super popular, has a really great life, rich parents, everything's going really well for him, and then one day on the walk to school he just like gets kidnapped, and it's insane. And then it turns out that the reason he's been kidnapped is there's a whole bunch of stuff to do with genetics and genetic modification, and he basically uncovers a big conspiracy. I read it, like I said, as a teenager and then reread it several times as a teen, and it's just like a really good classic kind of like rompy thriller in the YA genre, and it's wicked fun and I'd really recommend it to people. And then finally, this book is not technically white on the cover, but it's white on the spine, so go away. And that is I Play the Drums in a Band Called OK by Toby Litt. It's pale, it's white here, it works for the thumbnail, that's all I care about. So this is a fictional account of an account of like a fictional rock star. As the name suggests, it's a drummer from a band called OK, and it's about their rise to fame and then dealing with all of the kind of drug side of things there. I read this really ages ago. It survived like a flood. I don't know if you see there's a bunch of flood damage on it here. It survived a flood, it survived a bunch of house moves, and I really enjoyed it, and I think it really captures that kind of like existential angst of like early 20s, and also a lot of the like rage that a lot of rock and roll has in it, and a lot of that kind of like touring spirit and discussions about drugs. And if you really like Daisy Jones and the Six but you liked the music side of it rather than the horrible torrid love triangle, which I thought was nonsense, I think you'll really enjoy this, because I think it really captures the essence of what Daisy Jones and the Six was trying to do, and I think this book personally does it better. Yeah, like I say, really good fun book in general. And that is it for me. Have you read any of these books? I've got a fair number of obscure ones in here, but that's the whole point to this video series, was to highlight really obscure books on my channel. So yeah, have a wonderful reading week and I'll chat to you soon. Bye!